Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Short Attention Span webinar. Kelly, this week we are going to be doing a sales review.
I love it. It's been a while.
It has been a while. We've talked about salespeople. We've talked about managers.
Yep.
So now, here are the things that should be covered. When you're sitting down with your salesperson and that once a year, hey, you know what, here's what's going on, here's what we like, here's what we dislike. These are the things that we think you need, we think you need to cover. Kelly, why time management first? Was that by mistake, or do you think that's a good place to start?
No, I think it's because what we have found is it's the biggest challenge that most people claim to have, is that they don't have enough time to do this or that or the other. So it's most people's biggest deficit, and it's relatively simple to address. And although we've spent months and months working on it, it's by far the most important thing.
You know, but it's an interesting conversation starter. If you think about that, how would you talk about a sales rep's time management? Hey, I want to make some observations here. You know, I noticed that you're coming in at 9:30, quarter to 10 every day. Now, you know what? You're in sales for a reason. I'm not going to tell you what you should or should not be doing, but you're also telling me that you're very busy and you're overwhelmed. So, you know what? Put those two things together. Think about how you are managing your time. So I think that's a very good place to start. Kelly said it's number one. Yeah, it's number one with veteran salespeople. They all complain about we don't have enough time to do the things that we want to do. Start there. Number two, and notice that these are sales skills. You know, good question to ask a sales rep. Tell me about voicemail. Tell me about how you are beating voicemail. This has got to be, Kelly, the number one obstacle to our sales staff, our salespeople. Correct?
Oh, it's gotten, I mean, it used to be somewhat of a challenge, 15 years ago, but today, I mean, people aren't picking up the phone at all, and that's what everybody's saying is how do we get their attention, how do we get through this? So yeah, it's either a matter of helping them, showing them how to get around it, how to work through it, or how to use it, most importantly. So it's a pretty complicated issue, but as a manager, yeah, you wanna understand what their current philosophy is regarding it and make adjustments where necessary.
I think that's exactly right. Give me a sample voicemail that you would leave and put them on the spot. What would you say? Are you formulaic? Do you say the same thing every time? And if they kind of stutter and stump and ooh and ee and ah, I don't know. You know what? They're probably not going to come out and say, hey, guess what, Kelly? I really struggle with that. Very few salespeople are going to do that unless they feel safe. And, of course, same thing here, overcoming objections. All right, let's talk about we already have a vendor objection. You know, sales rep, Kelly, how are you going to handle that? That's a great question in a review, because these are things that you might not, unless you are on the phone doing a listen-in with someone or on a joint sales call, you might not be observing these things.
Right.
So ask them directly, and if they're stumped, then you might have something to talk about on that one.
I would also want to get very clear on the difference between an objection and a put-off too, because one of the things I find so many people are having difficulty with today is, send me samples or let me see your equipment list, things like that. So yeah, it's very important, I think, to articulate with them what the objections are and what their responses are to make sure that they are presenting the strongest possible way to get through all of this, and which is, the result being higher sales.
I like that. Okay. Now, next one up. Kelly, tell me how you are going to expand your sales to existing customers. Do your customers know everything that we sell, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the account review, and again, these kind of go up exponentially with the size of the customer. But some customers do monthly account reviews, sometimes quarterly, sometimes annually, to make sure that you know all the key players, and yes, that they are aware of everything in your arsenal, that they know everything that you're doing. But I think just as importantly is, are you dealing with multiple departments within that organization? Because some people get really pigeonholed and they go, I'm working with this guy in marketing, he's my guy, I'm his guy, and that's all we do. When you're missing out on opportunities in administration, you're missing out on opportunities in public relations. So again, putting your head together with them and saying, what about this, what about this, have you thought of this? Because I would like to see you grow this account. I know that this account has potential. Work together to come up with ways to get more out of those accounts, because it's a heck of a lot easier than bringing in new business.
Yep, absolutely. And there's the next one. It's not just, I mean, obviously you're going to talk about prospecting, but how? That's a good question. You know, the first three really are about why aren't you selling more. These last two are about moving from there and saying, how are you going to grow? Tell me about your prospecting process. What are you going to do first? Then what? Then what? Then what? And you've heard us say this before. 9 out of 10 times, a sales rep makes one voicemail sales call and never calls again. They have no process. They don't. They prospect when they've got time or when they're really low on business, but then when it picks up again, they stop. They have no prospect, no prospecting process.
Right.
And you've got to jump on that and make certain that they've got something. Now, Kelly, you already touched on this, I think, which is the individual account planning.
Right.
And you probably, I don't know that you could do this with all of their top 10 and top 10, but certainly the top 1, right? You know.
Oh, I think it's got to be at least the top 10 because, you know, this is all meaningless if you don't have a goal and a strategy for how to get there. So if your salesperson can't tell you that, look, in 2013 I want to sell $1 million, and you figure out what the shortfall is and what it's going to take to get them there, and be able to articulate that, you know, if my average customer is $40,000, that means I need 20 new customers, which means I need to do X, Y, and Z, and help them see the way. Help them see that that means this many new prospects in the pipeline every week, which again ties into the prospecting process. It is, all of this is meaningless if you don't have, you know, some thing that you're trying to accomplish and the way to get there.
Okay, that's 6. Here's 7, motivation. That's a big one. And I think the question, this is a question to ask. Kelly, what's motivating you right now? You know, take a snapshot of where you are right now.
Right.
What's motivating you? And there's motivators, the best motivators come from within.
Right.
You know, I want to buy a house, or I just bought a house, or we've got a baby on the way, or, you know, those are great motivators. The motivators from the outside are the ones that the manager himself or herself applies. And that's either the carrot or the stick. But the question to ask is, what is motivating you right now?
And you could give them motivation, too. I mean, there can be more than one kind of motivation. You know, and I think that's what makes great managers, too, is to say, okay, so those are your personal motivators. Let's talk about maybe some competition within the organization. Let's talk about some reward structures, you know, things like that, because you can be motivated by more than one thing at a time, and that could actually produce better and more meaningful results, too.
Oh, absolutely. All right, number 8, and then I've got a question for you, Kelly. I just wrote down here. The last point that we came up with was, what do you need from me? You know, how can I help you? And this kind of ties into my question that I was going to ask you, Kelly, is do you present this agenda to the sales rep prior to the review? What do you think? Do you say, here are the 8 things we're going to talk about?
No.
Really?
I wouldn't.
Okay, how come?
I think that these kind of conversations can be more productive off the cuff. I think if you don't give them time to prepare their standard what they think you want to hear answer, you're going to get more honesty and probably have a better conversation, you know, that again I think is a little more real. But I think the most important thing about this last point, you know, saying what do you need from me, just like when we were salespeople and we had to remember to do this, is when you ask that question, close thy mouth and listen very carefully to what you hear. Don't put words in their mouth. Don't say, do you need me to go to bat for you with production, or do you need me to get that estimator to work faster? Just ask the question and listen to the answer and really try to act on it. Make sure you understand what they're saying and then act on it, because that's what shows them that you've got their back.
But if there is one question I'm going to give to them ahead of time, that's the one that I'm going to give to them. That's what made me think of it.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so see, I'm okay with saying we're going to talk about a bunch of things, but I got to tell you something, Kelly. At the very last thing I'm going to ask you is, what do you need from me, and I want an answer. And
absolutely.
You can even say,
you know what? I think good managers should be asking that question all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think it can be asked during, you know, when you're getting an RFP together. I think it can be asked in, you know, difficult times when the place is jammed. It can be asked. And can and should be asked all the time. And you could get different answers every single time you ask that question.
Yes. Yes. All right, there, sales managers. There's 8 things to cover in the sales review. Kelly, thank you. Great job.
Thanks, Bill.
And we will talk next week on another short attention span webinar. Take care, everybody.